You know, Violet, what this garden needs is a big rosy posy. Right there in the middle. And I'm just a sweet William, I mean Stanley, to do it.
This movie hurts me. Like, really bad. I know there are a lot of bad animated movies out there, but this is something different. I guess let's start from the beginning. Don't worry, I'm not just gonna shit on this movie. I have some ideas for it, like they matter now for a 20-year-old movie. But don't worry, teacher, I finished my homework. I swear I did. Ugh. Fuck, I hate it when that happens. Now then. So to understand why this movie is so painful, you need to understand about the people that made it. Or should I say, the guy that made it. Bluth is considered the master of making dark animated family films, and has made some of the greatest animated films ever made. To strike a good balance of a film being family friendly and really dark without being too heavy-handed was a rare skill. Bluth had the understanding that a film goes to dark places so you can appreciate the light moments more. Among many other things, this is what made Bluth films so good. Usually anyway. At this point, everyone knows that the 90s wasn't the best time for Bluth. Films were getting stranger, and the choices were just fucking bizarre. And the apex of his downfall was, well, this.
Rosie, did you hear? Rosie. Oh, yes, I like that a lot.
So let's quickly go over this movie, because why not, you know? It starts out with some really well-drawn and classic Bluth backgrounds that give you a false sense of security that the film you're watching might actually be good. And then you see our main character Stanley, who's trying to hide flowers in his house because flowers are illegal in this world. Well, it's a good thing he keeps the keys to his house on the outside in plain sight. You know, because he's not hiding anything.
I'm a bad troll.
A mishap ensues, and then we meet our main villain, Gnorga. Here's our first song in this movie, and it really isn't that good.
It feels delicious to be so vicious. I'm Gnorga, the queen of mean.
Why is it so mean?
I guess it's not the worst song ever written, but for a first song in a musical, and the villain song that's supposed to get you an idea of what the villain is like, it's pretty fucking weak. She sentences him to being turned into stone, but her husband suggests to send him to a place where nothing can grow as a punishment instead. So, Central Park? Did they just come up with this title before they even wrote the film and then just tried to shoehorn it in later? He ends up in Central Park and for some reason runs around with car noises. He gets sad and bitches that he can't grow anything in this world, and then proceeds to grow a patch of grass out of fucking nothing. Oh, I get it. And now, introducing the other protagonist to the film. Fucking kids who are currently shitting their pants. Oh, good! This is Gus and Rosie. Gus is pissed because he can't go to the park to play with his boat, and Rosie is worried about fucking nothing because she's a fucking baby.
Boat.
They sneak out to go to the park, and Rosie finds Stanley in a cave under a bridge.
Get your ass whooped!
They proceed to waste your time with pointless dribbling and baby talk, with bouncing flowers and singing.
I like to close my eyes so my heart can plainly see.
I do have to say, this song isn't that bad. Like, it's no masterpiece, but it's passable. It's kind of like The Light before the complete shitstorm hits. Speaking of which, Gus comes in and stirs some shit up, causing Rosie to cry and get the attention of the Queen, who realizes that Stanley's doing fine. What a shock.
Of course.
All the flowers get together and try to cheer her up by dancing. Oh God, help me, Mr. Toaster! Ah! Gnorga causes Gus to cry a river, because apparently she has that power as well as stoning.
I am Burag, and I have lots and lots of powers.
And then Stanley turns the boat into a ship, because he also has that power, apparently.
I have the power to have all the powers I want.
Apparently this happened because of some lame shit about dreaming and believing, and then the ship starts flying, and we get another song! And a really pointless bad one.
A place my dreams have made with wishes from my heart. There's such a...
Fuck. They try to go home just to be ambushed by our super scary villains. Rosie is taken and Stanley pusses out to go save her. Gus gets turned into a troll because, you know, symbolic and shit.
You want to act like a troll?
And Rosie eats shit and dies. Yeah, no, Stanley brings his airship to save them, and then Gnorga uses her new power she pulled out of her ass to control Gus's newly magic troll thumb.
That doesn't count, fat ass. Yeah, that's it, Carmen. You don't get to have any powers.
And then Stanley eats shits and dies. They put a statue in the middle of Central Park, and then he comes back to life and takes over New York. And that's it, roughly. Now to break down some specific points. I really don't get his role in this movie. I guess you could see him as a Merlin character who's supposed to show the kids how to believe and dream and all that stupid shit. Or maybe more like a Care Bear.
I happen to be a wizard. A soothsayer.
I mean Stanley.
But then let's have him run around screaming and then puss out when the time actually comes to do something. I guess you can look at that of him being afraid of Gnorga and then trying to overcome it at the end. But we really barely see the connection between those two, so it doesn't resonate to any level. It could also be kind of a practice what you preach type of lesson, but it's an immediate turn. It's like, kid, you have to believe in yourself. Oh no, I don't believe.
You'll never have a dream come true!
Stop wasting time!
Stanley's a weak fucking character and he comes off as a retard who can't do anything. So when he comes to you and says, all you need to do is believe, you don't believe him. Fuck Stanley.
Why can't we ever do what I want to do? I want to do what I want to do!
I understand the reasoning for having to have kids in your animated film. Hell, this is not even anything new to Don Bluth. Kids are usually seen as the symbol of innocence. Looking at another Don Bluth movie, All Dogs Go to Heaven, Anne-Marie fills this role perfectly. The same can be said about Fievel from American Tail. I think having kids in these situations brings home the tragedy and gravity of the situations that they are put in. It seems like a bizarre point to bring up when talking about trolls because on the surface, it seems like they fill these roles. The symbol of innocence, bringing them into dark situations, etc. But here's the main difference between them. No one fucking cares about these twerps.
Boy, this stuff writes itself!
This is important when writing your main characters as kids and expecting to keep an audience over 5 years old. It's hard for you to like a character when the majority of their dialogue is bitching and drooling. And if you don't like the characters, you don't care what happens to them.
No shit.
I understand where they were going with Gus. Not all kids are perfect. They can get angry and impatient and fussy, but you can still write a character with high emotions and make them likable so that when they're in a situation, there's actual tension and a general want to see them get out of it. Rosie is just a blank slate, just for all the girls to say, "Aww." She has no personality whatsoever. The most she does in this film is cry and get captured. She's there to give Gus a reason to do anything. That's it. She is a plot device.
Hey, this is serious. I'm King Lord!
I don't get this guy. Really. I do think, however, he is the most entertaining character in this film. But everything he does doesn't make sense to me. He really seems against doing anything to Stanley, even though apparently he is this big problem to them. He was the one that suggested to send Stanley to Central Park, and when Gnorga calls him out for how stupid of an idea that was, he tries to hide it and defend it. He comes off as being against every plan the Queen has. Let me remind you that the Queen is only seen as a villain to us, the audience, not to the eyes of her people. To them, she is the Queen for a reason. She is the embodiment of everything they want a troll to be. They adore her. Why is he actively against her? There were points in this movie where he seems like he was a good troll in hiding like Stanley was. And then in the end, maybe he would help them. No, that never happened. And in the end, he's fighting alongside her. And nothing came of these bizarre moments.
First they hate each other, now all of a sudden they love each other. Oh, it doesn't make any sense to me.
Of course not, you're a robot.
Guess we can compare him to Killer from All Dogs Go to Heaven, because he's kind of the same character. The goofy sidekick to the main villain. Funny enough, it's the same voice and the same performance.
But boss, it wasn't my fault. I mean, to be perfectly honest, you see, Thunder was on duty. Take it up with him.
Killer is only there out of fear of Carface, and you can tell that from the shakiness in his voice and his general actions. Killer doesn't do anything to help them until the very end, and that's after Carface is killed. Back to Gnorga. I get that she's a scary ruler, but the relationship has so many contradictions in it, it looks like it was thrown together at the last minute. Hey, so does the rest of the movie! Clearly the biggest disservice to this movie, and to Don Bluth in general, is how dumbed down and kiddie it is. It's a movie about dancing flowers and believing in yourself. Why? This seems like a plot in a Care Bears movie.
Care Bears countdown. 5, 4, 3, 2.
Oh boy, I am not gonna hear the end of this. You jackass! You've done it, idiot!
I'm surprised that during the climax, Stanley doesn't look at the camera and tell all the kids at home to believe really hard and to say, "I believe in you, Gus!" That's the tone of this movie. There are a few moments that give you hope with great visuals and great animations, but you get completely sucked out of that when you realize we're in a world with no sharp corners and where everyone talks like this.
No, Stanley. Can you say Stanley?
Troll.
Yeah, that's what made animated movies stick with us for so long. Talking down to your audience. So as I said before, I didn't come here just to shit on Troll. I have some ideas on how to make this 20-year-old movie better. Because it matters.
If you haven't seen a troll in Central Park, you must. It is like looking into the face of God and seeing him smiling back, saying, "You are
Horrible, putrid, poorly prepared, vile, unappetizing, disgusting."
Firstly, an idea to consider is whether this should be a feature film at all. A way to cut out a lot of the fluff and bullshit in this movie is to make it a short. Bluth has done shorts before and they turned out great. But this is a feature, so I guess let's look at it as such. Make Gus and Rosie older kids. If you're going for the plot of believing and wonder and all that stupid shit, why not make Gus a teenager? It seems like the idea they had for Gus was a kid that didn't believe or have wonder about life anymore. I honestly don't buy a 7 or 8-year-old kid being this pessimistic. Making him older could justify lines like,
Dreams are silly.
in going with that idea, you can make Rosie older, like maybe Anne-Marie's age, old enough where your dialogue isn't, but still young enough where she's curious enough to get into problems for Gus to have to go after her. For the trolls, why not have Lort suggest not Central Park, but Earth as a whole? Because millions of years ago, they were the ones that sent the meteor that killed the dinosaurs, and they figured the Earth would still be a complete wasteland, and he just ends up in Central Park. When Gnorga finds out that Stanley's still doing fine, she can lash out at him, and his response would be like, But I thought it was a wasteland. We took care of it. Or something along those lines. You know, not actively being against your queen. They hint at Gus being a troll by his behavior, and turn him into one by the end of it. I don't know, maybe make a bigger deal of it, or make it like a gradual thing to bring the point home, like he's slowly turning into a troll. Maybe something like Pleasure Island in Pinocchio. And since the troll world is the best location in this film, why not see Stanley in this world more? See his relationship with more of the trolls, instead of the guy who has to be reminded to breathe. The intro goes by so quickly, and you never really get a chance to see the harshness of this world and get an idea what it's like. But really, the biggest change that this movie needs is in its tone. You should never talk down to your audience, no matter how old of an audience you aim for. The second you do that, the second you limit yourself to only having people in that age group want to watch it. And when they inevitably grow up, your film will die and be forgotten. The only real reason this film lives on is because of Don Bluth's name. And because of stupid people like me.